Hi everyone, and welcome to Women with Disabilities Victoria's Module 2 of the Micro-Credential on what is prevention of violence against women with disabilities. My name is Tess.
And my name is Carly. We're going to look at primary prevention today. Primary prevention focuses on what needs to happen to stop violence from occurring in the first place. It takes a whole of population approach to identify what drives violence and then seeks to address each of these drivers to create a society where violence is not accepted and is less likely to occur. A primary prevention approach tells us that violence against women is preventable and that if we focus on addressing its drivers across all levels of our society, we will be able to create a world where all people live safely and free from violence.
So how is prevention different? So we can see from this pyramid, if we start at the bottom where primary prevention is, Carly talked about how it aims to stop violence from occurring in the first place through initiatives that focus on the underlying drivers or causes of violence. And we can implement this across all parts of society and within different population groups, from sporting clubs to churches and religious institutions to social services. And then when we move up the pyramid, we can see that early intervention is the next part. And this aims to change the trajectory for individuals at higher risk of perpetrating or experiencing violence and intervenes when there are early warning signs. So here, it's where we might have programs to support women with disabilities, for example, or to support Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women or women from refugee backgrounds to empower them to have a voice and to speak up and to avoid becoming victims of violence. Whereas it also works with perpetrators on stopping the violence before it gets worse. And then if we move up to the final part of the pyramid, response, this is where we support survivors and hold perpetrators accountable for their actions in an aim to prevent the recurrence of violence. So this is where we see people being removed from their homes in order to ensure people's safety.
So what drives violence against women with disabilities? There are 4 key drivers of violence against women with disabilities, and these are driver 1, condoning of violence against women with disabilities.
An example of this is everywhere. Condoning of violence against women with disabilities basically means that violence is acceptable and accepted when we know it's not okay. But condoning of violence comes under the forms of trivializing violence, excusing violence, justifying violence, shifting blame, and downplaying violence. And examples of this might be, oh, it was just a little bit of rough handling, trivializing violence, or for women with a disability, excusing violence might come in the form of he was stressed out, he's a carer, or victim blaming might come in the form of for a woman without a disability, she was wearing a short skirt, she was asking for it, or for a woman with a disability, she's too demanding about her needs.
So driver 2, men's control of decision-making, ableist control of decision-making, and limits to the independence of women with disabilities in public and private life.
So I like to break these down into 2 parts. So it can be at the individual level and at the systemic level. So at the individual level, this can look like controlling someone's money, controlling their informed consent, which informed consent is basically giving us all the information so that we have all the options available to us and we're not restricted in any way, shape or form, and we can make a choice and decide on what's best for us. Keeping in mind that women with disabilities are the experts in their own experience. Systemic violence can look like not being equally represented in Parliament, for example, and currently there are no women in Parliament that identify as having a disability. Now, I know that I need to be very careful when making this statement because they may well have disabilities, but the fact that they don't outwardly identify as having a disability means that they're not yet comfortable in doing so in this space because it's not yet a safe space to do so. And as a result, this means that women with disabilities who may be hidden in Parliament cannot actively advocate on our rights, and so will continue to be deprioritised.
So driver 3, the stereotyped constructions of masculinity, femininity and disability, and the intersecting impacts of this for women with disabilities.
You know, for women in general, stereotypes can look like she's passive, she's agreeable, she's polite, she's kind. But for women with disabilities, we also have these stereotypes of being passive, kind and agreeable. But on top, women with disabilities are often infantilized or treated like children. Women with disabilities are seen as unfit mothers. Women with disabilities are being seen as asexual or hypersexual because for some reason people can't seem to make up their minds. And also, a really, really important one is that we're seen as unproductive members of society that can't really contribute to much and we should just stay in bed and do nothing all day.
Driver 4, sexist and ableist peer relations that emphasise aggression and disrespect towards women with disabilities.
So this can look like sexual fetishisation of women with disabilities and really disrespectful representations of us in pornography. The fact that men will sleep with us just because they want to tick something off a list or, as a notch on their belt, or they want to brag to their mates, that bro code and locker room talk. And this is a dangerous driver because when men only have aggression as their only emotion that they're allowed to express, and then, they're not allowed to cry and they're not allowed to be emotional, this is where this sexist and ableist behaviour plays out and where disrespect towards women with disabilities is rife.
So what do people think causes violence? There are many misconceptions about what drives violence against women, including poverty, alcohol and drug abuse, violent upbringing and childhood experiences of violence, poor anger management skills, mental illness, stress, including disability carer stress. These influences are known as reinforcing factors, and they are often confused with the drivers of violence against women. The reinforcing factors do not themselves drive violence against women, but they can increase the frequency and severity of violence.
So what can we do to prevent violence against women with disabilities? There are 5 key actions we can take to prevent violence against women with disabilities, and they include, action 1, challenge condoning of violence against women with disabilities. So a good example of how you can challenge this is if you're a disability support worker and you work in a day service, instead of gendering the activities for men and women where men do the fishing and the sports and women do the arts and crafts or knitting, mix it up a little bit. Don't be afraid to let people choose what they want to do and to let them have their autonomy over their own decisions. Action 2, promote and enable women with disabilities, independence and decision-making in public and private life. A really, really good example that I want really to stick in your head, really, and I'm using all my emotion here because I'm Greek and I use my hands. When we talk about women with disabilities, allow us to make mistakes because that's the only way we're going to learn. And if we're given the opportunity to budget for the first time at 40 years old, of course we're going to make mistakes if we're not taught about budgeting from a young age. So this is what we call dignity of risk. And although you might want to push us in a certain direction, we need to be able to make those mistakes and learn from them in order to fully experience life. And remember, it's our choice. Action 3, foster positive personal identities and challenge gender and disability stereotypes and roles. I certainly don't fit into all the stereotypes of women with disability, and one way we can actively challenge this is through doing the work that I'm doing today. Because a lot of people think that women with disabilities are better off dead or better off in their beds doing nothing all day and are unproductive members of society. One way we can challenge this is through giving women with disabilities opportunities to get jobs that really make a difference and that are really powerful, put us in powerful roles. People in the community are not used to seeing women with disabilities as their doctors, as their lawyers, or even doing training like I'm doing today. Action 4, strengthen positive, equal and respectful relations with and among people with disabilities and between people of all genders. One way we can do this is through educating boys, girls and people of all genders in special schools about sex education and respectful relationships. I can't tell you how many times a woman with disability who previously attended special school back in the day told me that either there was no sex education at their school or it was set at a child's pace, or that if they attended a mainstream school, even they were taken out of the class because of this stereotype that women with disabilities can't or don't want to have sex. And finally, action 5, promote and normalise gender equality and disability equality in public and private life. This can look at anything really, from recruitment and employment practices, making them accessible, to parliamentarians having a disability in order to enhance our voice, to the smallest thing of, challenging when your kid comes home one day from school and says, am I able to one day be a lawyer? Am I able to one day have a family? Am I able to one day do whatever anyone else wants to do? You should be like, yep, and find an accessible way to do that.
The next module will cover what the first driver of violence against women with disabilities. Condoning of violence against women with disabilities. Please fill out the quiz to gain your certificate of completion for this module. And on behalf of Women with Disabilities Victoria, empowering women, thank you.